guys skipped over this question yesterday, and I totally don't blame you at all. Just going to talk about the meaning of life. But it's oh, you did? Okay, let's just go. Okay, this is Vince.
Skip.
Yeah, done. No, but this is really big in our culture. I like this question because I think this is the question everybody is asking right now, or maybe they're not asking, but they're just assuming. This is what people are fundamentally all about when we're living this kind of world that you probably heard the word post-truth thrown around, a post-truth culture. It means you get to write your own story. You get to live your own truth. Everyone just gets to make their own meaning. But what's great about this question is it's acknowledging there's something in all of us that wants to. Scientists talk about it as us being meaning-seeking creatures. You know, that there's something fundamental about us, that whoever you are, this is true of every single life, that in some way, all of us are looking for meaning. And so I think there's something really... there's something interesting about the way we're then trying to answer that question, because our desire within us is to find it ourselves. It was Christopher Hitchens, the atheist who died a couple of years ago. He basically said, it may be that existence is just a kind of pointless joke, but it's actually not possible to live your life as if it were. You can't actually live that way. If you take meaning out of the picture, then all you're left with is basically trying to distract yourself or entertain yourself. But anyone who's done that will just know that actually pleasure is so wearying. Like eventually it just runs out, it runs dry. And I think at that point, what are you left with? And I think it's no wonder then that we're kind of in this space right now where there's a suicide epidemic, particularly amongst young people who are already running out of pleasure so fast and so young that they're kind of left wondering, like, what is left to my life? It was the atheist philosopher Albert Camus who said, the literal meaning of life is whatever keeps you from killing yourself. It's just whatever keeps you from killing yourself. It's whatever keeps you here. And I get why we want to be able to find that in ourselves. Vince just said it, that Nietzsche quote, if there's a God, how can I bear not to be him? It sounds so good, doesn't it? Like, why have some God come along and tell me what to do? I can make my own meaning. Maybe meaning can just be like a DIY job. Just do it yourself. And I think that's the kind of space we're in right now in our culture. People talk about the pursuit of happiness. Actually, psychologists and social scientists say if you really want to pursue something in life, if you want to actually find happiness, you shouldn't pursue it. You should pursue meaning. That's actually what will result in happiness for you. The question is, can we do that without God? Is it possible to find meaning without God? Because on a naturalistic framework, you take God out of the picture. Vince already said it. You want it with time plus matter plus chance. That is what the universe amounts to. So when people talk about the search for meaning or finding meaning, there's actually nothing out there to find, if it's just chance. But take that a step further. It's not just that there's nothing out there in terms of meaning, but there's nothing in here as well. If the universe is a product of chance, and that means so are we as human beings. There's one called Yuval Harari, who's written a bestseller a few years ago called Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. And in it, he basically says that. He says, actually, as human beings, that there is no meaning to our lives. He says, if we're just products of this kind of blind evolutionary process, then actually any kind of meaning that we find, it's only going to be delusion. It's just delusional. And yet there's an irony here, because we're also saying in terms of evolution that actually we've evolved to become meaning-seeking creatures, because we actually can't survive without meaning. And yet we're also saying at the same time that meaning is delusional. So we're kind of in this complete and utter contradiction where we need meaning to live, but actually we're also saying at the same time, but it doesn't exist. It's all a delusion. So we're having to force ourselves to live in a delusion in order just to get through life. I mean, that is a problem for us as human beings. And even if meaning were out there, even if you wanted to say there is an objective meaning and you can somehow find it, actually, if you believe we're a product of blind evolution, if we're just dancing to our DNA, that means in our minds we are hardwired in such a way that actually free will isn't even possible. So even if meaning was out there, you would be incapable as a human being of actually even making a meaningful choice. So we're in this complete conundrum where we want meaning, we actually need meaning, but if we take God out, we can't get it. The fact of the matter is, you don't matter. You do not matter without God. You are just matter and nothing else. And so when you frame it that way, it's like, is it any wonder that suicide is on the rise, that there's a guy called Bertrand Russell, another atheist philosopher, who basically held his hands up and said, you know what? We just have to admit that our starting point is that we're building our lives on a firm foundation of meaningless despair. I'm like, that is not a foundation anyone can build on. There's no foundation there. There isn't even a foundation. Christianity says something wildly different. Christianity says, from the very first pages of the Bible, that you were made in the image of God, male and female, that you're not an accident, that you are homemade, that you are not random, you are intentioned. And you're not just made by God, you are made like him, which means that woven into your very DNA, there is meaning. It means that you're not just random, thrown together matter. It means that you matter. You matter deeply to God. You were literally knit together in your mother's womb by a divine designer who made you in love, by love, and for love. Those are your choices. You know, and so that's the question that's before all of us. We long for meaning. Is that just some random happenstance, some byproduct of evolution, or could it be that the meaning you long for was actually a signpost that has been embedded in your very being by the God of the universe to point you to the place where meaning can be found? And I think C.S. Lewis, a Christian writer, he actually said it best. He said that if I find within myself a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world.